The sound was small. That's what I remember most. How something that small could undo everything. My grandmother's ceramic music box, the one she brought from Savannah the year she married my grandfather, slipped from the moving box and hit the hallway floor in 3 clean pieces. I stood there looking at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I think I had already run out of that. My ex-husband, had asked me to be out by the end of the week. He didn't say it cruelly. That was the worst part. Derek said it the way he said everything near the end, with a kind of practiced patience, like I was a client who had misunderstood the terms of a contract. 4 years of marriage, and he spoke to me like I was a line item that no longer made sense on the spreadsheet. The official reason, was that we couldn't have children. 3 rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages, 1 specialist after another looking at me like I was a puzzle they were losing interest in solving. Derek never got tested. I asked once. He looked at me with that particular stillness of his and said the data pointed in my direction. I believed him. I believed him about most things for a very long time, so I packed what was mine, which turned out to be less than I thought, and I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building on the east side of Portland, Oregon, 2 weeks before Christmas. The hallway smelled like someone's curry and old radiator heat, and the elevator was broken, and the super handed me my keys with exactly the enthusiasm of a man handing over keys he'd handed over 100 times before. The apartment across from mine had a welcome mat that said, "Go away," in small letters. I noticed it because it made me laugh for the first time in about 3 months. I didn't expect to meet the person who lived there for another week. His name was Noah. I know that sounds like the beginning of something, and I suppose it was, but it didn't feel like that at the time. It felt like a man holding a very large bag of groceries, noticing that I had dropped my keys down the gap between the elevator door and the hallway floor, and retrieving them with a pen from his jacket pocket without being asked, and without making a thing of it. "4th floor elevator's been out since October," he said, handing me the keys. "They say February." "February," I repeated. "Could be March." He had dark hair going gray at the temples and the kind of quiet that doesn't feel like shyness. It feels like a decision. He nodded once and went inside, and I stood in the hallway a moment longer than I needed to. That was December 14th. The weeks that followed were the kind of weeks that feel like weather. You survive them more than you live them. I was still teaching 3rd grade at Maplewood Elementary, which saved me, I think. 8-year-olds do not care about your divorce. They care about whether you remembered the caterpillar they named Gerald and whether you will read another chapter of Charlotte's Web before the bell. Gerald survived. I read the chapter. It was enough. My mother called every other day from Tucson. I told her I was fine. I told her the apartment was cozy. I did not tell her that I was eating cereal for dinner 4 nights a week, or that I had put my grandmother's music box in a shoebox on the closet shelf, still in 3 pieces, because I couldn't bring myself to either fix it or throw it away. Derek called twice in January, once about a tax document he needed, once, I think, just to make sure I still answered. I saw Noah in the hallway, on the stairs, occasionally at the row of mailboxes in the lobby. He carried the same canvas bag most mornings, left early, came back at irregular hours. Once I came home at 9 at night, and he was arriving at the same time, still in a jacket that looked like it had been through something, and he held the lobby door open for me without comment. Once I was struggling with a flat-pack bookshelf I had absolutely no business trying to assemble alone, and he paused in the hallway and said, "You're missing a camlock," and pointed at the instruction sheet and then kept walking. He did not offer to help, but the next morning there was a small hardware bag hanging on my door handle with 2 camlocks and the exact screwdriver size I needed. I told my friend Danny about him over the phone. She teaches 5th grade, 2 classrooms down from me. "Is he attractive?" she asked. That's not the point. It's always the point. I didn't answer her. The truth was, I hadn't really let myself look. Looking felt like the beginning of wanting something, and wanting something felt dangerous right now in a way I couldn't fully explain. In February, my principal called me in and closed the door, which is never a good sign, and told me that a parent had filed a formal complaint. The parent was the wife of a city council member. The complaint was that I had made her son feel singled out during a class discussion about honesty. The son had, in fact, been caught lying to another student about something, and I had addressed it the way I addressed everything, quietly, without drama, in a way I believed was fair. None of that mattered. The complaint went to the district. There were 3 meetings in 2 weeks. I was put on what they called a support plan, which is the kind of language institutions use when they want to create a paper trail. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell Derek. I sat with it and I kept showing up, and I graded papers at the kitchen table until 11 at night, and I did not let myself fall apart at school. The night the district sent the formal written notice, not a termination, not yet, but close enough that I could see the shape of it. I sat on my bathroom floor for a while, not crying, just sitting. When I got up, I went to make tea, and I burned my hand on the kettle, a small, stupid burn, and that was the thing that finally made me cry. I stood at the kitchen sink running cold water over my hand and crying about a kettle burn and the music box in 3 pieces on the closet shelf and 4 years of marriage and the word childless and a legal document. And Gerald the caterpillar who had turned into a butterfly 2 weeks ago and flown away, and I cried about all of it while the cold water ran. There was a knock at my door. I dried my face, ran my hand under the water again, and opened it. Noah stood in the hallway. He was holding 2 takeout containers. He looked at me with that measured quiet of his and said, "My order was wrong. They gave me 2 of the same thing." He paused. "It's the Thai place on Morrison, the basil noodles." I looked at him. He looked at me. "I heard the kettle," he said, very quietly. I stepped back and let him in. We ate at my kitchen table. I didn't tell him about the district notice. He didn't ask about the burned hand or the red eyes. He told me the history of why Portland Thai restaurants are consistently underrated compared to Seattle ones, and I told him that was an extremely specific opinion to hold, and he almost smiled. Almost. He left at 9:30. He washed both containers before he left. I didn't ask him to. I thought about him more than I should have after that. I noticed things I hadn't before, that he always took the stairs even when the elevator was running again, that he kept odd hours, that he sometimes had a second phone different from the one he texted on, that he would glance at and put away with a kind of practiced neutrality. That once, when a delivery driver got belligerent with the super in the lobby, Noah stepped to the edge of the situation without doing anything, and the driver left. "Just like that, what do you do?" I asked him once in the lobby in March. "IT contractor," he said. "Infrastructure security." It was a perfectly reasonable answer that somehow explained nothing. In April, Derek came back. Not back as in asking me to come home. Back as in showing up at my school during my lunch break, which I only learned about because Danny texted me from the parking lot saying your ex is outside and he doesn't look like he's here to apologize. I went out. He was standing by my car, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who had decided to manage a situation. He told me a journalist was looking into some of his development projects. A woman who covered housing policy for the Oregonian. He said it was a politically motivated thing, people who didn't like how the riverfront project had been handled. He said if she called me, he'd appreciate me not talking to her. I asked why a journalist investigating his development projects would call me. He said she was being thorough. He said it in a way that suggested thorough was a character flaw. I told him I would speak to whoever I chose to speak to. He tilted his head slightly, the way he did when recalculating, and said I might want to think carefully about the timing, given the situation at my school. He said it mildly. He said it the way he said most things. I drove back to my afternoon class and taught fractions for 40 minutes and did not let my hands shake. That night I stood in my kitchen trying to decide whether the feeling in my chest was fear or anger, and I had mostly landed on anger when there was a knock at my door. I opened it expecting Danny or the super about a maintenance thing. It was Noah. He said, "I know this is an odd thing to say, but the man who was in your school parking lot today, I need to ask you something about him." I stared at him. "Can I come in?" He sat across from me at the kitchen table and he said things slowly and carefully, the way you lay things down when you don't want anything to break. He told me he was not exactly an IT contractor. He told me he did infrastructure security. That part was true. But for a private firm that contracted with federal agencies, he told me he had been in this building for 7 months. He told me that Derek's riverfront development project had been a thread in a much larger investigation involving fraudulent permitting, wire transfer irregularities, and 3 other developers across 2 states. He told me he had not planned for me. I heard that last part very clearly. I sat with it for a moment. You were watching him, I said. Before I moved in. Yes. And then I moved in across the hall. Yes. And the keys. The cam locks. The Thai food. He was quiet for a moment. The keys were just the keys, he said. The cam locks, I noticed the bookshelf. The Thai food. He stopped. The Thai food was not professional. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked at the street for a while. There was a city bus going by and someone walking a dog that didn't want to be walked, and a light on in the coffee shop on the corner that stayed open too late. Did you know about the district complaint? I said. The parent, the council member's wife. A pause. Not when it was filed, but after. The council member has been in contact with Derek. Yes. I turned around. You should have told me. I know. He didn't qualify it or explain around it. He just said it. I know I should have. I'm telling you now. I asked him to leave. He left. I did not sleep much. I lay in the dark and sorted through 7 months of small moments and tried to figure out what was real and what was operational, and I kept arriving at the same problem, which was that they felt like the same thing. The cam locks felt real. The Thai food felt real. Him standing at the edge of the lobby situation and saying nothing felt real in a way I didn't have language for yet. I called Danny at 7 in the morning. She listened to all of it. So he's been investigating your ex-husband, she said. Yes, and he lives across the hall. Yes, and he brought you Thai food. That's what you're focusing on. Claire, she said, when is the last time someone brought you Thai food? I didn't answer. I'm just saying, she said. I knocked on his door that evening. He opened it and waited. I'm not okay with how this started, I said. I want you to understand that. I do, he said, but I need to know what's happening with Derek. And the school. All of it. He opened the door wider. I came in. His apartment was nothing like I expected. It was spare, not cold, but organized in a way that suggested someone who traveled light. There was a very good coffee maker and a bookshelf with actual books, and a second monitor on the desk in the corner that he closed when I walked in. He made coffee and told me everything. The investigation was close. The journalist at the Oregonian, her name was Rachel Park, had been working the financial angle for 4 months. The permitting fraud touched 3 city council members, which was why the complaint against me had come from that direction. Derek had been quietly pressuring people who might talk. The firm Noah worked for had flagged it 3 weeks before it landed on my school. What happens to him? I said. His license gets pulled. His projects get frozen pending review. Some of it is federal, some is state. The city council members resign or get removed. It moves slowly, but it moves. I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug. He told me it was my fault, I said. The children. He ran every test on me and never once. I stopped. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said very carefully, Derek has a daughter. She lives in Bend with her mother. He's been paying support since 2019. I set the mug down. He knew, I said. He knew. I sat with that for a long time. I sat with it the way you sit with something that reorders everything before it. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly and completely. Okay, I said finally. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just the sound of something settling. That was April 19th. By May, I had figured out that the feeling I had about Noah was not complicated. It was simple. That was almost scarier than the complicated version. We started having dinner on Thursday evenings. Not dates exactly at first, just the way 2 people who are both bad at asking directly work around the direct question. He cooked. He was a better cook than I expected. I brought wine I couldn't really afford. We talked about things that had nothing to do with Derek or the investigation or the district, his family in Vermont, my grandmother from Savannah, the right length for a novel versus a short story, whether Portland ever truly has a good summer. By June, I had decided I was in love with him. I did not tell him yet because I had an instinct that he was the kind of person who needed to arrive at things in his own time, and because I was afraid, and because Gerald the caterpillar had disappeared on a Tuesday, and I had learned by then that timing matters. In June, I also found out I was pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor again, but differently this time. Not because I was falling apart. Because I needed a moment to be still with something I hadn't let myself want in so long that recognizing it took a minute. I bought 3 tests. They all said the same thing. I knocked on Noah's door that night. When he opened it, I just held up one of the tests and watched his face. He went very still. Not the controlled stillness, but a different kind, like a man hearing something he'd been listening for without knowing it. He said, "Come here." I went there. At 8 weeks, the ultrasound technician looked at the screen and said, "Okay, so," with a particular tone that parents of multiples will recognize immediately. I was not a parent of multiples. Yet, "There are 2, she said. I looked at Noah. He was looking at the screen. His jaw was doing something I hadn't seen before. 2, I said. 2, she confirmed. He took my hand. He held it like something he intended to keep. The investigation became public in August. Rachel Park's piece ran on a Sunday, front page, above the fold, digital and print. 3 city council members and 4 developers named Derek's projects frozen, his license suspended pending review. The council member whose wife had filed the complaint against me resigned by Monday afternoon. The district dropped the support plan. My principal called me directly and said the words "deeply regret" and "full reinstatement" in the same sentence, and I let her say them without making it easy for her, which felt right. Derek called me once after the article ran. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that started with my name and ended with silence, and I deleted it and made tea, carefully this time, and did not burn my hand. My mother came to Portland in September. She stayed a week. She met Noah on the 2nd day and spent the rest of the week finding small reasons to knock on his door to ask things she didn't actually need to ask. On the 5th day, she pulled me into the kitchen and said, "He looks at you like he's already decided," and I said, "Mom," and she said, "I'm just telling you what I see," and I said, "I know," because I did know. I had known for a while. She held my face in her hands before she left for the airport. She said, "Your grandmother would have liked him." I thought about the music box in 3 pieces on the shelf, and I nodded. In October, I took it out of the shoebox. I brought the 3 pieces to a ceramics repair shop on Burnside, a small place run by a woman who had been doing kintsugi restoration for 30 years. She looked at the brake lines and said they were clean. She said she could fill the seams with gold. "The Japanese idea," she said, "is that the brake is part of the history. You don't hide it." I left it with her. I picked it up 3 weeks later. The seams ran gold along the cracks, and the music box looked different than it had before. Not restored to what it was, but changed into what it was now. I put it on the bookshelf. The one Noah had helped me fix with cam locks in January. The twins came in November, 3 weeks early, which was textbook, the doctor said, for a twin pregnancy. There were 24 hours of labor that I will not describe in detail, except to say that Noah did not flinch once, and that at one point when my blood pressure spiked, and there were 2 extra nurses in the room and monitors going, and a conversation happening above me that I could not fully track. He bent down close and said very quietly, "I've got you," and I heard it in my body. A girl and a boy. 4 pounds 11 and 5 pounds 2. The NICU for 8 days, which were the longest 8 days, and then they came home. My mother flew back. His parents drove down from Vermont. His father, a man of very few words, held my daughter for 45 minutes without moving, and his mother brought a week's worth of food in a cooler and reorganized my kitchen without asking, and I let her because it needed reorganizing. Danny came and stood in the middle of the living room with my son in her arms and said, "I cannot believe you manifested this with Thai food." And I laughed so hard I had to sit down. Derek's case resolved in December. He pleaded to reduce charges. His lawyers negotiated hard, and the federal piece was separated from the state piece, which meant the sentence was lighter than it should have been. And I thought about Will McKeachman for some reason, a stranger's voice in my head saying, "Push the prenuptial. Don't let it go." But his license was permanently revoked. The Riverfront project was dissolved. The daughter in Bend, her name is Lily. I learned her name. Got the support that had been delayed for 2 years, released all at once. Liam lost his house. I thought about that differently now. I thought about how the things we build on dishonesty don't fall dramatically. They just stop standing. One day the ground isn't there. On Christmas Eve, Noah asked me to marry him. Not with a production. We were in the kitchen after the babies were asleep. They slept in the same bassinet still, turned toward each other the way they had been in the ultrasound, and he was washing a bottle and I was leaning against the counter. And he turned off the water and dried his hands and looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "I would like you to be my wife, if you want that." I said, "I want that." He nodded once. He reached into the pocket of his jacket, which was hanging on the back of the chair, and produced a ring. Simple gold band, one small stone, and put it on my finger with both hands, carefully, like something he intended to keep. "I've had that since August," he said. "The Sunday the article ran? That Sunday, yes." I thought about him going to buy a ring the same day Derek's world came apart. I thought about the difference between those two men and what they had built, and on what ground. I went to the bassinet and looked at them. My daughter and my son, 4 pounds 11 and 5 pounds 2, now 10 pounds something and growing. The music box on the shelf caught the Christmas light, and the gold seams ran across the cracks. And I thought about what the woman on Burnside had said, that the break is part of the history, that you don't hide it, that sometimes the seams are the most beautiful part. Outside, Portland was cold and damp and imperfect, and fully alive, the way Portland always is. A bus going by, someone walking a dog. The coffee shop on the corner with its light on too late. I went back to the kitchen. Noah was making tea. He already knew how I took it.